Chapter 12. The Richest Man in Town. What we first noticed about the house was that it was huge, much larger than ours. It even looked like it had more land out back. But that wasn't the most surprising part. The most confusing and unexpected thing we realized about that house was that it looked a little run down. Not terribly, but just enough to make it seem like no one had lived there in years. Poppy even looked surprised by the mystery, and we both walked up and looked through the big picture window near where the watcher was perched. There were no blinds or shades, so we went around and looked in each window. We quickly discovered our suspicions were right. There was absolutely nothing in the house except for a big table in the kitchen with a few things sitting on it. We couldn't tell what was on the table through the window, but it was clear whatever it was were the only things inside, and it was more than obvious that no one had lived there since God knows when. After being as confused as we could be, we went to the front door and found it was surprisingly unlocked. Poppy stopped before going in. It was like he was scared to step inside someone else's house, even if it was abandoned. I asked him what the big deal was, and that's when he finally let me in on the secret of why he was in jail with us. We'd never known, and honestly, we didn't care anymore. Not that we ever did, but I guess he felt like he had to tell me, right then and there. Poppy said the house he broke into used to be his. It was where he and his late wife Helen used to live. He said he knew he shouldn't have done it, but he didn't know any other way to feel close to her again. He said his mind was playing tricks on him after she died, and he didn't see any other way out. He also said he still felt wrong for breaking in, even if he wouldn't have been caught. Thinking about my own exodus, his words about not having any other way out sank in. After hearing what Poppy had just shared, I realized that his outcome resulted in something so much worse than his intentions, and it made me start to wonder if I was doing the same thing. The difference is, with mine, it would be final. You don't wake up from death to get a second chance. There is no early release from that decision. After taking a minute or so, we realized our worries for my neighbors outweighed our fears, or the possibility of another 30-day jail sentence, so we both went inside. Poppy went upstairs to look around, and I stayed downstairs to do the same. Our suspicions were correct. In many of the rooms, we had to wipe aside cobwebs just to get through, and there was no question that the house had been abandoned for years. We were just as puzzled as we could be. There was no sign of my neighbors or Buddy anywhere. This whole situation was so odd, especially considering how the watcher had all but forced us to go over there. Poppy walked over to the only thing left in the house, that big table in the kitchen. It was clear there was a framed picture turned upside down, a stained manila envelope, and an old Scrabble game that was still set up. It was covered in a layer of dust like everything else on the table was, but it looked like whoever used to live there just got up and left in the middle of their game. The tiles were still sitting on the tile racks, and it looked like whoever was playing already had their next words picked out. There must have only been 2 players, because only 2 of those tile holders were out of the box. At this point, Poppy and I looked at each other like we may have just entered the Twilight Zone. As Poppy started dusting off everything to include the board game and its pieces, our circumstances became even more eerie. When he got to the Scrabble game, he noticed the first set of tiles spelled out I-R-O-N, and the second, as confusing as it was, spelled H-E-A-R-T. This time, we definitely thought we were in an alternate universe, or bizarro world. We had no idea what was going on, but we both knew exactly who Ironheart was. Then I reached over and opened the manila folder, and the mystery continued. Inside there was a bunch of war bonds, some old stock certificates, and a signed deed for that gigantic house and all the land around it. Looking through the papers, trying to figure out what was going on, I finally got to the signature on the last page. Chills ran down my spine as I saw it was signed by none other than Lucian Graves Sr. Poppy was still shaking his head because, as smart as he was, he still couldn't figure out what was going on either, and he was known for being a super sleuth. I was almost scared to turn over that framed picture, but I did it anyway. And when I did, both Poppy and I gasped. We both knew we had seen that picture before, only this time it wasn't on my mantle. You know, the one Poppy and Dan used to gather around. Now it was there on the table of that abandoned house. It was a picture of my whole family from a long time ago. My nanny, Papa, Mother, and Lucian were all in it with me as a little boy. Just as I sat in Lucian Graves' old truck and figured out what the Watcher had really done for Noah, I think Poppy and I both began to realize what was going on there, too. Once again, we couldn't explain it, but we knew. Then, without saying a word, Poppy pulled a pen out from his pocket. At first, I thought it was a strange time to start doodling, but that wasn't what he was doing at all. He flipped over the manila envelope and wrote Ron Thayer's name on the back. Ever since we stepped into this house, the whole experience felt like an escape room, not the kind where you're trying to get out of a locked room, but one that was more about unlocking your thoughts and memories. And somehow, we were starting to find our way out. Poppy began shifting the letters and Ron's name around. He rearranged the letters one at a time, like he was unlocking something hidden in plain sight. I watched him, even though I had no clue what he was doing, until the final arrangement made it clear, even to me. The man we had known all this time as Ron Thayer was also Ironheart, which meant he was also Lucian Graves. He was right all along when he said, "The real story is in the spelling." Poppy, as solemnly humble as he could be, let out a laugh after seeing the similarity to his favorite movie and pretended like he was holding a champagne glass up in the air as he said, "Here's a toast to my buddy Lucian Graves Jr., the richest man in town." I did almost expect a bell to ring and an angel to get their wings at that point, because God knows our angels, my family, all of my family, definitely deserved them. Flabbergasted was an understatement, especially considering the thoughts I've had about my exodus lately and how close it came to becoming a reality. But as usual, I knew more than ever that Poppy was right as he'd ever been when he said, "God works in mysterious ways." I never saw the Watcher or Buddy again after that day, but I knew where they were. They were with my family. Poppy and I figured no one would ever believe us, so we decided to keep the story to ourselves for the time being. We'd pull it out if we really needed it, though. After that day, Sarah and I were able to spend all our time with Noah without a single outside worry. We paid off all the bills and found the best children's hospital in the country. 15% became 50%, then 80%, and finally, full remission. I almost missed 3 Christmases in a row, but I can tell you one thing for sure now. I'll never take a chance on missing another. Sarah and I go on date nights at least once a week now, and this time she actually has hair to brush before we go out, and it's beautiful. More than anything, I'll never doubt the one who knows me and my true needs the most, because he's the one who gave me and my family more time to make a difference. More time to leave something meaningful behind, more time to reconnect, and more time to matter. God bless. Thank you for listening to The Christmas I Almost Missed, written by M.A. Cole, narrated by Dale Rich.